This is OhioPodcast.com.
Episode 35, The National First Ladies Library. Welcome back, Ohio Podcast Nation. I'm Tom Sutman, your host. We are so proud to bring to the Ohio Podcast Nation our latest guest. She is Lucinda Frailly from Stark County and is the Director of Education and Special Events Coordinator of the National First Ladies Library in Canton. Our nation's First Ladies have played a big part throughout the history of the United States, and with the inauguration of our new president this year, we felt it would be the perfect time to bring Lucinda onto Ohio Podcast to give you a peek of how some of these great women have influenced America. Lucinda walks us through history. She tells us stories about the First Ladies during the presidential inauguration of their husbands. She also has stories how Ohio's 8 First Ladies, or is it 7? Anyway, how these women of Ohio had tremendous influence on women's issues throughout the nation. And Lucinda also takes us on a brief tour of the National First Ladies Library and the impressive exhibits on display there. Be sure to like, share, follow, and retweet this and all Ohio Podcast episodes to your family and friends on Facebook and Twitter. And look for us soon on Instagram. Listen in now as we hear fascinating stories about our First Ladies of the United States. We have on the line with us Lucinda Frailly. Lucinda is the Director of Education and Special Events Coordinator for the National First Ladies Library in Canton, Ohio. Lucinda Frailly, welcome to OhioPodcast.com.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me.
We're so happy to have you on. You know, we've been wanting to go to the First Ladies Library for a really long time, and we finally got the chance to do it over the recent holidays. What a beautiful place. You've got a couple beautifully restored buildings there, the library and the McKinley House, and I tell you what, Lucinda, it's really an impressive place.
Thank you. We think so. We think we're quite the something.
Well, you definitely are.
We are part of the National Park Service, too. You do know that, don't you?
Yes, I do.
In
fact,
we are, our title, we do operate as the National First Ladies Library. We're in partnership with them. But we are also called the First Ladies National Historic Site because we are a national park. Yeah,
I have a national park passport, and
you do.
I got the stamp. Yeah,
sure did. Yeah, we have a junior ranger program here and everything, so it's really exciting.
I tell you what, why don't we get started with you taking us on a little tour of the house itself?
Be happy to. The Saxton McKinley House is called the Saxton McKinley House for a reason. Ida was, we're pretty sure, born in the house. The Saxton family owned it. That was her family. It's also called the McKinley House because it is the only home that still exists, that President McKinley lived in longer than any other home, including the White House.
Oh, wow.
So the first thing we'll say is when you walk in, probably the most historic room in the mansion, we will call it that, but you will be surprised at how low-key it is. The family was low-key. And the ballroom floor on the top level, his office that he used as his law office when he married Ida. It was his presidential study, his gubernatorial study, and his congressional office. So it's always been his. It was always there, and we have a picture. It's been restored to look exactly as it was. The other rooms in the house, the formal parlor, people will see that. It's on one side, larger than any other room on the downstairs or upstairs floors, for entertaining, of course, as they did in the Victorian period. And on the other side, the family areas with the family parlor, the library, the kitchen that probably Ida never saw, the dining room, the breakfast room, and all the living spaces upstairs, one of the bedrooms, another room there, a sitting room, and then on the top floor was probably, we have learned recently, that's where the President and First Lady mostly resided, even before she was First Lady, when they lived there.
Uh-huh.
So that room will probably change a lot. If some of your listeners have come before, they will see in a few months that it's going to be very changed.
Oh, really?
Because the more we go, the more we learn.
Uh-huh.
And it's very exciting the way the house was used. And it also contains more and more artifacts. The family and people who find us who have documented proof of their authenticity. We have so many things are now in there that belong to the families, both the McKinleys and the Saxon families. So that room is going to reflect her, the First Lady from Canton, Ohio, and the President, too. And so that's the Saxon house. And I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, it is.
And historic.
What are some of the items that people might be able to see that were McKinley's in his office?
Recently, in the last few years, one of the descendants of the McKinleys, now remember the president's and the First Lady's daughters both died. So this was one of his brothers. It's a descendant of one of McKinley's brothers. He had the desk that was used in the White House, and he gave it to us recently. And it looks like it would have been in the White House, probably in his study, something like that. But it did belong. That one was, we are sure, was in the White House itself. So it's exciting. And there is also a gorgeous, large presentation mirror. It probably was not in his office. It was in the White House. It was given to Mr. McKinley. It's what's called a presentation mirror. It's mammoth, and it's just beautiful. It looks right at home in his office, so it's a good place to display it.
Yes, it is. It looks great there. Now, what about the bedroom? Are there any items in the bedroom that have any history?
And we are so excited. I'm so glad that you asked, because the furniture, some of them, except for the bed, but the furniture belonged to the McKinleys, and it was in the home it had passed down through descendants, and they happened to be here in Canton, Ohio, or Massillon. Their home is in Massillon. Another relative helped us to locate it and locate the furniture. The family, just long story made short, said, sure, we'll just give it to you because we're moving. And I don't think they really, they were just old furniture to them, and they knew it belonged to the McKinleys, and I think they were very proud of it, but they never really thought about it. But when they loaded it onto the truck, our curator was there, and they brought it to the Saxon house, and it went up to that long porch. You probably saw it at the back of the house, and as it was going in, it got very emotional for the family. I think they realized the historic significance of that furniture. And now that it sits in the room itself, it's remarkable how it just changed the whole character of that room, Tom. It looks like it's at home, like it belongs there. And you know that, yes, this was Ida McKinley and President McKinley's furniture. And there is also an invalid table that's in that room. Ida, as you may know, had very bad physical problems after the birth of her second daughter, and she was also epileptic. So there were times when she had problems, and this invalid table is absolutely gorgeous. It really is pretty. Right. It looks like a hospital table, but you update it to be beautiful, and that's what it is. It's wooden, and it has gorgeous legs, and it's on wheels, and she didn't even need to use it for an invalid table to pull up to a bed. She could have used it for anything.
Right.
It's that pretty. But we're so lucky to have it.
Right.
People have been very generous, very generous. So it's right there in the bedroom with that furniture.
I love going to museums and seeing the actual artifacts, I guess you would call them. Is there anything else that you can tell us about? Any other stories?
Oh, absolutely. We just, again, in this past year and a half, jewelry has come back to us. And some of it has been donated, and some of it we were helped along with donations so we could purchase it. But there is one artifact that, it's a special case is being made for it. It belonged to President McKinley. It's a pocket watch in gold, and it was given to him by his mother. And it's engraved to William, his name McKinley. And the date is the date that he married Ida McKinley, that he married Ida Saxon. She gave it to her son on his wedding day. So it's important to us because there's two women,
Oh, yeah.
It's two women who adored him, and it exists. It's beautiful. It was his, and we cannot wait to safeguard it and put it on display. It's priceless, and we're so happy it's ours.
That is so great. Now, the other part of the National First Ladies Library is the library building itself. Now, what kind of things go on there, Lucinda?
Well, this is called the Education and Research Building. There is a research library. appointments can be made to, it's like any research library, it's by appointment, but anybody can use it. Just have to call and make an appointment. We have a small theater in the lower level, very small, but it's very useful. We do lectures. We're going to have one in a couple of weeks in there. We can do live presentation, reenactment. It's a Victorian, it looks like a small Victorian, they called it a Nickelodeon type of theater. It's gorgeous. So we do, that goes on here all the time, both for children and for school programs and for adults. And we have the museum itself for all the First Ladies. It changes, the exhibits change here. And so I call the Saxon House the touring building, mm-hmm. and the Education Research Center the doing building, because this is where most of the activities of the museum take place.
Okay. What kind of exhibits have you had on display there through the years?
Oh, gosh. One of my favorites was, because I guess I am in the arts, was called Encore. A lot of your listeners probably don't realize it, but we had some real artistic First Ladies. Mm-hmm. They were writers. There were artists, a real artist, believe it or not. The first Mrs. Wilson Ellen was a fabulous artist. Caroline Harrison was. So their works were on display. Some of them were dancers, like Betty Ford. She was a dancer with Martha Graham Martha Graham Dance Company before she ever met Jerry Ford. That was one of my favorites. It was just so exciting to see that side of so many First Ladies. Mm-hmm. We have focused on their health care issues. Some of them were, I think we called it the Heart of the Nation, and we had the Heart Truth dresses up for First Ladies who championed, like Laura Bush, the women's heart health. We focused on, in that exhibit also, mental health. Just all sorts of things that the physical fitness that First Ladies champion. And there were just so many issues so that was a good one. They've all been good. It's been varied, and one just recently went down is the campaign, First Ladies on the Campaign Trail. Mm-hmm. What was like in the early part of the country with their presence and their input to the present. So it's varied as the women are themselves. We did one on the First Ladies as mothers, and that was a fascinating one. We did one on rising to the occasion, First Ladies and who were had maybe different things in their personal lives, like personal death in the White House with their children, or Laura Bush, 9/11, mm-hmm. just various things that they changed maybe the whole focus of their First Ladyship and the presidency.
When we visited over the holidays, it was mm-hmm. really cool to see all the Christmas trees that were directed, and I think they said they were decorated in the same way they appeared in the White House, or attempted to. Okay.
Yes, kind of. The First Ladies start off, again, very slowly, but as time went on, there was one who added the Christmas tree. There was one who added poinsettias. There was another one who did wreaths, and so it's like anything else, garlands. So there are. So we did that, and Mrs. Bush, Laura Bush, did the national parks, holidays in the national parks one year, and that's where you saw a lot of the trees I think you're talking about. Mm-hmm. They were decorated similar to what they were in the White House. Yeah. We had nutcrackers in there, if you remember seeing those big nutcrackers. Jackie mm-hmm. Kennedy did the first theme, and it happened to have been the nutcracker theme for the uh-huh. Blue Room Trim and all. We have Mrs. Carter did dolls, antique dolls. So we kind of did our own thing with the big tree. It's huge mm-hmm. in that lobby, or in the great room.
Now, when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that the lives of Ohio's 8 First Ladies are basically a microcosm of the advancement of women throughout the history of the United States.
Well, first of all, Tom, it's a common assumption that we've had 8 First Ladies because we've had 8 presidents from Ohio. We go for truth here at the First Ladies. There were 7. We do not consider Julia Grant an Ohio First Lady because she was not born here and she did not ever live in this state. So it's not because, that's the truth. So we consider that they're still a great number, and it's still something very proud of, 7.
Oh, yeah.
But they are a microcosm of what happened in our history. I'm going to go off a little bit with Mrs. Adams, who said, remember the ladies in the Constitution or the Declaration. And John Adams just thought she was pretty funny to say that. But the women were really given no rights in this country. We had none, besides no right to vote until 1920, and no right to inherit money. You couldn't sign documents. If you worked, you had to quit when you married. No education was guaranteed for women. Just nothing. So the Ohio First Ladies kind of belied all of that. They were all educated as much as a woman could be, and you kind of see that happening through the grace of their fathers, and then later their mothers, the couple, their parents. They did work, as did Ida McKinley in her father's bank, which was really unusual.
That's right.
They belied everything. And so it's just kind of interesting that these women, if you follow the Ohio First Ladies, you can see they were different for their time because, it just didn't happen with the way the nation was focused socially. But they were remarkable. And their parents and their fathers right along with them. I want this for my daughter. And so they were remarkable that way, and probably all very well prepared to be, as a result, the First Lady of this country.
Since you're the education coordinator, I gave you a homework assignment to tell
Yes, you did.
To tell us a few stories about the Ohio First Ladies. So why don't we start off? How about Lucy Hayes?
She was the first Lady to graduate with a college degree. And she's also the first to be called First Lady, and it stuck. At the time she was First Lady, she and the President Hayes, went from Washington to California. The papers would all say, the First Lady of the land appeared here today, Lucy Hayes, blah, blah, blah. First Lady of the land just appeared all over the place. History, including Mary Lincoln, were called First Lady of the land once in a while. It never stuck until Lucy Hayes. Mm-hmm. She was the very first to where the title First Lady stuck. So it's our First Lady from Ohio who has that significance. So that's pretty cool.
That really is. What can you tell us about Caroline Harrison?
Caroline was very unique. She was an artist, a good one. She would cultivate orchids. She would cultivate exotic flowers. She would paint them, and she would paint on anything. Fans, material. She designed her own state china, which is beautiful. We have some of it here for people to see. And she taught the technique of china painting to others. But she designed her own. She was the artist who also tried to change the look of the White House. There were not many rooms she took all of her family with her, all 15 members of them. Wow. And there were not as many bedrooms as she would like. So she designed a whole new White House. And she put bathrooms in, I think 5 bathrooms and some bedrooms. The kitchen was upgraded. So she's really credited with putting electricity in the White House. She was afraid to turn the switches on herself and off, so she'd ask the staff to do it because she was afraid of that newfangled thing. But she did a lot in her less than 4 years really there. Unfortunately, she died of tuberculosis. So Caroline did a heck of a lot.
And she was the second Harrison.
Yes, she was. Her grandmother-in-law was Anna Harrison, the wife of William Henry. She has a distinction of being the wife of one president, and she was the grandmother of another. So wow. Caroline was related to her by law.
Okay. What can you tell us about Helen Taft?
She had ambitions for her husband to be president. And when she became First Lady, she kind of, you heard the word drain the swamp from the president like Trump these days. She literally did.
Really?
Washington kind of was a swamp. Around at the Jefferson Memorial, she said people should really have a nice place to go to listen to music. She was a musician. She was a concert class musician and very responsible for starting the Cincinnati Symphony on her own. She really did.
Wow.
And was on that board for her whole life. But so she brought wonderful entertainment, and she thought that everybody should be able to enjoy it. So she brought cherry trees from Japan. She loved the cherry trees. The mayor sent them to her. The tidal basin is beautiful today because of her. Bandstand was built there for the Marine Band to go and play a couple times a week, and people would just go. And she drove up in her Pierce Arrows. She brought automobiles to the White House. They were still using horse and buggy,
right?
And she didn't like the cars that Congress was giving her, so she kind of solicited. It wasn't a good. She got her husband in trouble for doing it, but she got the cars she wanted. The companies just gave them to her, white Steamers and a Pierce Arrow, and she was a happy camper. She was the first to donate her inaugural gown to the Smithsonian. So, these ladies were cool.
Yeah, trendsetters. Obviously.
Yes, trendsetters, you bet.
Yeah. And then we've got Florence Harding. There's an interesting story about Florence, right?
Yes, there really is. Lots of interesting stories about her, but I'll pull out one for you. She was the last of Ohio's first ladies, and it's important to say that she's the first lady to vote for her husband for president. She knew the women's vote would put Warren in. She was another one who wanted her husband to be president, and she helped to groom him. She was responsible for his election. Many people give that to her in history because she did get the women's vote out, and the women's vote did put Warren Harding in. She got it for him, and he called her the Duchess. When he would consult with her a lot. When he consulted with Florence, people knew that he would get good information, and they knew he consulted with her. And when that happened, generally it was good for the country, good for him as the president. And when he didn't, boy, he got in trouble.
Yeah.
He should have let her in on some more things.
Hindsight's 20/20.
You bet.
With 2017 inaugural ceremonies taking place, this is the perfect time to talk about the role of the First Lady during the inauguration. And
Yeah.
it hasn't always been like the way it is today, has it?
No, you're so right. Women, again, were considered very unimportant. Martha Washington was not in New York. That was the first temporary capital when her husband George was inaugurated. And nobody really thought much of it. And neither was, for the inaugural, was Abigail Adams there. The first president's wife to really witness was Abigail, the second inauguration. And when Dolly Mattis witnessed it the first time in the Capitol in Washington, when Washington became the permanent capital. But their attendance was there. That was basically it. Mm-hmm. So it evolved overall. They just weren't important.
One of the first ladies was the first to ride in a car. The only reason I remember this is from the movie. You said that there's the theater there in the education center there. Something they said in that movie was about how one of the first ladies got into the car or something. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, that was Helen Taft. The ladies would just go to the end after time. They were on the podium or on the dais, but they weren't really seen. They came in, they sat down, they watched. That was it. Well, there was a tradition that going back to the White House after the swearing-in ceremony, that the president would ride back with the outgoing president. So the incoming with the outgoing, and then back to the White House they'd go. Teddy Roosevelt didn't want to ride back. He just wanted to go home or wherever he wanted to do. Teddy did what Teddy wanted to do. He didn't care about protocol. And Helen Taft saw that the carriage was open. She jumped in, and people told her she couldn't. Can you imagine? And she just, she didn't ignore him. She got in, she sat down, and she rode back with him, and that started a new tradition. The pictures, if you remembered seeing it of her in that carriage, they're so funny. She looked like the cat that ate the canary, and she even said something to the effect, again, I'm paraphrasing, I felt so proud because I was doing something that nobody had done before, no woman had done before, and I was doing it. Helen loved to be the first at things.
She was an interesting lady, that's for darn sure.
She was a character.
Yes. Now, there's also a story about the holding of the Bible. What can you tell us about that? Yeah,
that's actually the catalyst that got the First Lady sort of right with the president on the podium itself. I mean, the picture is taken now. The First Lady is there. That was, believe it or not, it took all these years It was Lady Bird Johnson. It was President Johnson's inauguration. But this is the one where he was elected. And he asked his wife to hold their Bible. It was one that his mother had given him. And she was so touched by that. And that was so uncommon. Well, Lady Bird and Johnson had a great relationship. But it was so unusual for Johnson, to have asked something that poignant. Because he wasn't that kind of a man,
Mm-hmm.
But he asked her to do it, and she was so touched, and she did. You see her holding the Bible for him, and from that time on, First Ladies have held the Bible for their husbands. There is the lady there front and center, and up to that time, they had no official responsibility. In fact, that's probably not even official. It's just some Lady Bird tradition now that they do it.
To expand on the whole inauguration theme going on here, you have a very special exhibit going on there.
We do.
Why don't you tell us about it?
It's called Grand Entrance, Inaugural Pomp and Couture. And, of course, it's about the First Ladies. We have gowns that are, of course, the original inaugural gowns are the Smithsonian. And these are reproductions, but some we had and some we commissioned. And they're beautiful. If they aren't the inaugural gown, because sometimes the inaugural gown just doesn't exist, then it's a gown that's associated with the First Lady, and maybe was used in an official capacity, at a state dinner, or was seen in a photograph, something like that. So those are all up. We have all the information is there. You may have seen these beautiful little half-size gowns that were designed by, Jackie Kennedy's designer of her wedding gown. Her name was Ann Lowe. The gowns are gorgeous. They were made for the promotion of a perfume called White Shoulders by the Evian Perfume Company. And they needed a home, and, all these gowns were shown in Saks Fifth Avenue and some of these big stores. And when they were done, they were done. So Smithsonian didn't want them, but hey, we did. And they are beautiful. But there's all of that and all the information on the designers of their handbags and the designer herself or himself, and the shoes that hurt every single First Lady at the inaugural ball. There isn't one that didn't complain about her shoes. And we have films up about the inauguration and how the First Lady's role became slowly in there. Important, not as important, of course, as the taking of that oath, but still, how it evolved in our history. There's another one that's more silent, but it's the First Lady's dancing, and that was such a fun one to do. And so people will learn a lot about that whole inauguration and how it began from the time of George Washington up to now. It was a fun and fascinating and very, shocking and enlightening thing to learn too.
Right.
It was fun for us. It was some things I didn't certainly know.
Yeah,
that's one good thing. With every new exhibit, we learn new things.
Right, and there's definitely plenty there to learn.
There is.
How long will the exhibit be on display then?
It'll be up until September the 15th.
Okay.
That's when it runs. So it's up for a nice long time. We wanted people to be able to. We knew there'd be some interest after the inauguration. In the summer, we're in flux with people, and we knew this one would be popular, and so we're leaving it up for a little bit longer than we normally do.
Okay. Now, here, before we go, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about the volunteers at the National First Ladies Library.
The volunteers do a variety of things for us, Tom. They do, of course, the tours here in the education center there. It's mostly people can tour more freely, but the docents are here to help them with whatever they need, to escort them over to the Saxon House, because the tour begins here at the education center where I work. Then they walk them over to the Saxon House. There are guides there, of course, the docents. They also come and help us with programs. They will be here to help with anything we need. Sometimes they're asked to perform. Sometimes they're asked to check people in. They're here to help serve food. They are here to help escort people up and down during our legacy lectures, for example, that we're going to be having very soon, and get them to the right place at the right time. So they do a variety of things, and they come in and help us with putting up and down the decorations for Christmas and things like that. So everything we do, we need help with, we call them. And they have been very generous with their time and expertise. We find out what they can do and we use it.
Good idea. All the volunteers that we encountered were really friendly and very helpful.
Good.
You could really tell that they love being there. You really could.
Oh, they do. They do. Well, who could not be? I know that we don't have queens in this country, but there is such a respect and reverence for them. And the more you know about them, the more we learn about them. It's just awe-inspiring that you can pick these women up out of just ordinary life and put them on the world stage, and they perform. They do it.
Yes, they
do. It's amazing.
Now, I know there's just so much more we could talk about, Lucinda.
I know.
But we're about out of time now. How about telling our listeners how you can get to your website?
You just type in firstladies.org. That's it, and it comes up. Or if you just simply plug in National First Ladies Library, it comes up.
Right.
We've noticed anything you put in that has to do with First Ladies, our site comes up. It's really amazing.
Awesome. And you can also find you on Facebook, I would imagine, too,
yes,
right?
we are. We are on Facebook. That's kept up to date.
Okay. Lucinda Frailly, Director of Education and Special Events Coordinator for the National First Ladies Library, thank you for being with us on OhioPodcast.com.
You are very, very welcome.
With the inauguration of our newest president, this is the perfect time to plan a visit to Canton and explore the National First Ladies Library. And if you're like me and have a National Park passport, bring it along and get your official stamp. We want to thank Lucinda Frailly for taking the time to tell us all her wonderful stories about the First Ladies. When you go to the First Ladies Library, tell them you heard about it on Ohio Podcast. Don't forget to like, share, follow, and retweet this episode with your family and friends on Facebook and Twitter. You can also get all Ohio Podcast episodes downloaded for free by clicking on the iTunes button. From all of us at OhioPodcast.com, thank you for listening.